You're so square, baby, I don't care.
I have to talk about Elvis because I realize I have had at least several experiences of first degree of separation from Elvis. You know that terminology, first degree of separation from Kevin Bacon, which I've had that too, actually. um, but to focus on Elvis and Memphis specifically in that era of the 50s, yeah, um, I'd have to say it started when I was 5 years old and I was living in Wauseon, Ohio. And my father was a minister of a church there. And one of the families in the congregation were close friends with the Blackwood Brothers family, the Blackwood Brothers quartet, gospel quartet based out of Tennessee. And they came to our town a couple times while we were there. One time they did a public concert in like the civic center there. Again, it's a small town. They still had like a civic center, and they were at the peak of their popularity worldwide. I mean, technically, they were very popular in the gospel music uh, genre. Elvis Presley, loved them. He was their favorite group of any kind of music, not just gospel. And I didn't realize that at the time. I don't even think the Blackwood Brothers realized that at the time. And they sang at our church another time that they came. And I remember being 5 years old and the music, the rhythm, the energy, it was a faster tempo than I was used to, and very professional. And it just made a humongous impression on me. And I remember being outside, my father talking to at least two of the Black brothers, James and I think Dwayne. And I can see their faces very well. And then they had this huge tour bus, and it just seemed massive because I'm a little tiny kid. And one of their sons was sitting, at the wheel, like playing with it like this. I remember that, and it was. I found out later also that Blackwood Brothers were amongst the first, if not the first, to customize their own tour buses. And that's another thing that Elvis was interested in, and he apparently wanted to um, join them on tour at some point, and they didn't think that would be a very good idea, I guess. So that is something that always stands out in my mind too. And then years later, in the '90s, a friend of mine was road manager for Jerry Lee Lewis, the Killer, um, and so I got to get acquainted with Jerry Lee and with guitarist James Burton, who played with Elvis a lot, especially at the end of his career and the 60s and the 70s. And he's also considered one of the Wrecking Crew guitar players. And both of those guys obviously were really close friends with Elvis. And I got acquainted with them because of being in certain locations in several places around the country, um, including Indianapolis, Indiana, Los Angeles, and uh, Memphis. And I have so many interesting stories there. Um, my stuff was flown from Indianapolis to Memphis, and at the time I wasn't living in Indianapolis, but outside the city. But I eventually got my stuff like about a month later when I went to Memphis for a special celebration and birthday party of Jerry Lee Lewis. It was his 60th birthday, 40th year in show business. And it was a surprise kind of thing. He was playing a show at the Peabody Hotel, and people showed up to do kind of this is your life kind of thing. And I was backstage. I actually walked the band from their backstage uh, green room to the stage. So I was their escort to the stage. Um, and I think anytime I was at a show, I just automatically became an escort to the stage for them. And so I got to talk and get to know the band. Even Kenny Lovelace, who also I think played with Elvis too, certainly with different people in that era of rock and roll. And even shared a room with him one night, I believe, Peabody Hotel. And it was a remarkable experience. I mean, to be backstage, you know, and be the youngest guy in the room, and here's like, you know, Sam Phillips of Sun Records, and the DJ that first played "That's All Right, Mama" on Memphis radio, the first time an Elvis song was played anywhere. He was there, and Chris Christopherson had flown in from Hawaii, and Jerry Lewis's sister, and then the drummer was from You'll Hear Me in the Comets, and there was other. I was, you know, standing around listening to their stories. They were talking about, you know, life back in the day, kind of catching up and being nostalgic, and I wish I would at least have stepped up and made some sort of comment, but it was just amazing to hear their stories and to be there in person, to experience not only the concert, but the backstage stuff like that as well. You could see the excitement and the fire in their eyes, the rock and roll and how it changed everybody's life, and it made a huge impact in their lives. And so Jerry Lee did, of course, a show, and I was right there back at the back of the stage. I wasn't even backstage. I was in the back, really standing right behind James Burton and watching him play. It was just amazing. And, you know, those guys know probably thousands of songs, and James Burton didn't know what Jerry was going to pull out next. I could tell, because he was like, "Oh, that's what it is," and then he just started playing. You know, you wait for the first few chords or whatever of Jerry Lee on the piano. But very interesting experience to actually be around that energy and around those people. And no wonder the Beatles and the Stones and so many people were inspired by all that stuff. I didn't have a whole lot of time, you know, off, I guess, because I was busy with helping that event, working with that event, hanging out with the band and all that kind of stuff. And I did get a chance to walk down Beale Street here, go into B.B. King's Blues Club, at least for a moment, and just take and experience that. And it was interesting walking down Beale Street and going into a five and dime store. And this is the kind of thing I remember as a kid. You know, you go into the store, and what they did is they preserved a lot of the original building fronts of the building. And then you walk down the street, and in many ways, we feel like, you know, it's the street that Elvis walked down when he was a kid there. And you walk into this five and dime store, again, the front of the five and dime store, inside even, looked like a recreation of exactly how it kind of was probably back in the 50s. It was very interesting. I highly recommend visiting Memphis sometime. There's also the Sun Records. I did go to the cafe, didn't go to the tour, but I did eat lunch once at the cafe. There's also the Civil Rights Museum, which I wanted to see. There's another music museum there as well. So there's a lot of things to do there. So I definitely would like to visit Memphis again. I got a free ticket, I guess, to Graceland, but we didn't have time to go. And there was just so much going on. So there's more to the Jerry Lee Lewis story, which I can explain in another video, another blog, whatever. But I wanted to focus on Elvis just because I have these experiences, you know, and one of a kind and unique and very exciting, and made a huge impression. And of course, the music, you know, what can you say? Now there's this movie finally encapsulating his life. And I just thought it was time to talk a little bit about my experiences, my inspirations from Elvis. And don't be cruel to a heart that's true. I don't want no other lover. Baby, it's you I'm thinking of. I need a hunk of burning love. Rock and roll.